passe. Super, l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello everybody and welcome to the Unformed Handball Hour. Today you are joined by myself, Brian Campion, and Alex Kulesh back from his lovely holiday. Alex, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I am well rested and slightly exhausted.
Well rested and well hiked, it sounds like.
Exactly. I was in Peru for a couple of weeks, did some pretty intense hiking, got up to 4,750 meters above sea level. And I can just say that altitude is no joke. Didn't get sick or anything, but it's not easy.
Not easy, yeah. Speaking about sea level, Chris O'Reilly isn't here today, but he is somewhere in a beach at the moment at some beach handball tournament. Do you know exactly what it is again? I've slipped my mind.
I think he's just at there's just like a big Swedish one. I think he's doing it with Handbollskanalen, the Swedish kind of news site. And of what I've seen of some of the videos in that tournament, it just seems to be a bunch of normal handball players playing beach handball, but like a lot of them. And I've seen some videos of like a lot of contact for beach handball. There's some proper tackles going in. So I'm sure he's having a lot of fun there.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two types of beach handball. There's the beach handball that indoor players play in the summer with a few beers, and it's just normal handball, full contact on sand. And then there's actual beach handball, the other sport, you know. When I went to play beach handball for the first time ever at my club, and it was just full on tackles, people throwing each other on the ground. Nothing to do with spinning or 2 points or any of that stuff, just full on indoor handball on sand. Yeah, so I think they're sometimes actually not aware of the other rules sometimes.
I do find it, you get normal indoor handball players playing beach handball, and there's like two ways of going. Some players are just like, you know what? It's not for me. I'm just going to keep playing normal handball. And other players just pick up beach handball in 2 seconds, and they're doing 360s better than some players have been doing it for a long time in like a few games. And by the end, these tournaments do end up looking like beach handball tournaments.
How's your 360 these days? It's been a long time since I've seen you actually play any beach handball.
I'm still spinning. Top spinner, some say. Top spinner.
Top spinner? Is that your nickname, is it?
Just it may be contentious. Some people may contend that nickname, but I've heard it bandied around. Most of it may have been me, but like
you've walked into a room and someone, hey, where's top spinner? Are you talking about me? Yeah, we're talking about you. Like when I played handball back in Germany, they called me the kangaroo back in the day, but it was only for that short 6 months when I was in Pforzheim. Just that was the only nickname I had. I think Sweaty Hands was the one I was playing for Ireland for a little bit at the very beginning.
Jeez, I thought I was always Sweaty Hands. So
actually, no, I was shit fuck sorry at one stage.
Yeah, shit fuck sorry.
Yeah, because when I used to mess up a concept or a pass or something like that, I often say shit fuck sorry as a package, as one phrase or one word even. And Alex there was Sweaty Hands. I think we all suffer from sweaty hands though. It was a very sweaty-handed period, I feel like, when I think back to the Irish team.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're rambling here a bit.
It is summer. It is summer. So there's at this stage, there's not that much handball on. You're back from Romania, where the Under-19s Women's Championship happened. And we have talked about this. I listened to the morning clubs. I think we've talked about the Under-19 Women's European Championship in quite a lot of detail, just, the desperation of summer handball. But it looked like a really good tournament, and some of your footage was all over social media, so that looked really good.
Yeah, no, from a work perspective, it was really great. I had a really good time. And I think it's really good, interesting to go there and see these kind of budding players who in about maybe 3 or maybe 4 years, you're going to really see come on to the women's scene. And it really is, like, I said it to you guys in the group, when you watch the Hungary team, it really is like the team in the Mighty Ducks that nobody can beat. And they just are head and shoulders. The final, I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, I mean, they'd already beaten Denmark, hockey Denmark, and then first half, it looked, I think Denmark were winning, if I remember correctly, is it 1916 or 2017 or something along those lines. They were winning by 2-3 goals at halftime, and Denmark had played their socks off, but you just knew what was going to happen. It's like Hungary weren't even trying, just came out in the second half and we're just going to start playing now. And then it just was no contest. And it looked like Denmark couldn't play handball anymore. And Julia Scaglione, their top player, just completely disappeared. And then Hungary were just like an absolute team of Matthias Gitzel spinning, and the best 1-against-1 you can see. I mean, their 1-against-1 game is just so much better than every other team at the tournament. It was just a joke. And I think that's maybe why, or a certain recipe why they're so good at underage handball, is just they are so good at 1-against-1, and probably the best team I've ever seen at winning penalties. It's just to just do the same thing over and over again, and they just absolutely crush teams, and then teams just kind of wilt and then turn into nothing. And I do kind of feel like there's only a matter of time before you keep producing this amazing amount of talent. It is eventually going to transfer over to the national team. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I feel like you can't be winning all these tournaments back to back and then not have it translate somehow to the senior team. And there's definitely some players from this generation that are going to be very interested to see where they're going to end up. Petra Simon, obviously winning MVP, playing at FTC. People will know her obviously already in the Champions League, and she's a huge talent. So I think she's going to be one definitely to watch and keep a close eye on. But yeah, it was a great tournament. Had a great time. Romania was very interesting. I like going back. I like going there for anything handball related, because the Romanian fans are always a bit crazy. But I think we'll start the episode. I mean, we're rambling now for a little while already.
We have been rambling a little bit, but we do have a lot of news. Over the last couple of days, over the last week, there's been a lot of transfer news that has dropped. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. Do also want to mention that we're still working on a bigger episode that will cover some of the report from TV2 in Denmark about match fixing allegations. So we're still working on getting a really quality, informed episode around that, because it is a sensitive topic. So that is still to come. For now, I also want to say thanks to everyone who's actually stuck around on the Patreon. We do know it's off season. There's not that much handball on, but people have still stuck around. We will continue bringing out episodes like these where we're covering some of the bigger news going around the handball world. Teams are going back into preseason, so very soon there's going to be some proper handball news coming your way, as well as some bigger episodes over the summer that we hope to cover some interesting topics. And yeah, get ready for a new season. And yeah, just have to thank everyone who has supported us through the Patreon. If you haven't, if you want to sign up now, that would be a slightly weird decision, but we will appreciate that. It is, go to patreon.com/handball hour to sign up. You can sign up for as little as $1 a month. But we will get on with this show, and I think the biggest news that has been really developing over the last week has been the Kolstad financial issues. And, I listened to the last Morning Club, and it all seemed, the reaction from you and Chris was, it's all going to be fine. It's all okay. They're going to figure it out. And for now, it really does seem like it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last 2 hours, there's been an article released on TV2 Norway's website where they've outlined that there are 7 names, or 7 key players, or 7 stars, whatever you want to call them, who have agreed to take a 30% cut for the 2023-24 season. They would be Sander Sagerson, Göran Johannesson, or Göran Sorgart, however you want to call him, Magnus Ruud, Vetle Age, Torbjørn Bergerud, and Sigvaldi Gudjonsson, and Magnus Skålerud. Sorry, I've also got Magnus Skålerud there. So Sigvaldi will be sticking around, unlike his Icelandic teammate who has gone, Smarsson, who's gone off to Magdeburg. I think some people might have expected more outgoings, but that core group, and probably the most important players to the project, have decided to kind of maybe band together and stick around and take the 30% pay cut for the season. The club has announced that it will try to compensate the players with prize money should they win whatever competitions. I think everything above $1 million profit, I presume that's $1 million local currency profit, will then go back to those players who decided to take the pay cut. Because I would imagine everyone outside of those 7 names is probably on fairly normal to low standard wages for the league. But those players taking the cut are the one who are lightening the burden for the project.
Yeah, and I have to say with Giannis Smartson, it's really understandable, and I think the club has been quite accommodating. They did release him from the contract after he just didn't show up to preseason testing, and it seemed like at that stage he already had the contract with Magdeburg essentially signed. But looking at it from his perspective, he was one of their first actual star signings. He came in quite early last season and led this team to a league title, a qualification for the Champions League, and his reward was essentially, here's a pay cut. And I'm sure he wasn't on the big money that the new players are coming in on. He was probably at a level below that, and he got a pay cut and was probably going to end up on the bench behind that Norwegian backcourt of Sagosen, Sugor and Ruud. It's understandable that he's going to not be too happy about that, and the club released him from the contract without too much issue, allowed him to go to Magdeburg, where I think he will be a really good addition to that Magdeburg team. He did show he was a quality player, and they, for Magdeburg, they were lacking the depth. First without Christiansen, who will be injured for a long time, I would say. I'd say about half a season. He had such a severe shoulder injury that he then definitely made worse by playing in the final with a dislocated shoulder and becoming MVP. But it was he'll say it's worth it. Well, I'd say he said it was worth it at the time. I don't know if he fully believes that at this moment. But without him, they need the backup in the backcourt, and they also lost Marco Bežak, who, despite his age, stepped up at the right times throughout the season. So that depth is very much needed for Magdeburg. So actually quite a good signing for them, because I was getting a little bit worried and not seeing too many players come in for Magdeburg. But otherwise in Kolstad, it's a weird situation. I was reading an article on VG, the sports website or sports newspaper in Norway, with Kolstad's general manager, Jostein Sivertsen, who this whole kind of idea came from, who kind of brought Ray Mathusen in, brought the sponsors in, and his main message in this interview was that they were just a little bit too ambitious, too fast, which I kind of, it feels like it, right? That they went from kind of nothing to a season where they competed at a really good level, won the Norwegian league, and then just got these big stars in immediately, paying, Sagosen a contract that's equivalent to his Kiel contract. That is what the news was at the time. So, that'll be just under kind of €1 million per year. That's a huge salary to take on along with the other Norwegian players. And he just said, they had too little margin of safety. Essentially, everything needed to go right for them to take on these players, and the kind of global economic conditions didn't quite help, which I think is a pretty weak excuse. But he didn't fully stand by that one in this interview. So Kolstad initially released this statement saying, okay, it's global economic conditions, the Norwegian kroner is weak, but he actually just said it was relatively bad planning, but they're still in a good position. They just need to have an incredible season next year, which is a lot of pressure on this team.
Yeah, I mean, what in your books do you think would an incredible season be? Obviously, winning the domestic league and cup and getting to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Would that be an incredible season, do you think?
Yeah, essentially, in that interview, he mentioned that for next season, for them to kind of stay at this level, they have booked 9 Champions League games in the big arena in Trondheim of 9,000 people. So for 9 Champions League games, they do have to qualify out of the group, which, it's very possible. I don't see that as being a wild ambition for this team. And yeah, it's just they're going to be reliant on that income from the big games and the full arenas, and they have to be good. That's the thing. They've booked 9 games in this big arena, and if they start just losing, they lose their first 3-4 games in the Champions League. Will that arena still be filling up for the second half of the group stage, even if they qualify in like the 6th position in the group and barely scrape it with 2 wins? Is that going to be enough? I don't think so. I think they have to, they have to keep the excitement up. The first few games are always going to be really, amazing. The crowd, everyone is actually still into this project, but they have to keep the crowd with them. So they have to keep performing at a high level.
Yeah, I think, when you look at their opening games in the Champions League as well, they're going to be away to Pallister, which I think they probably would fancy themselves to. Pallister are by no means any pushovers, but they probably fancy themselves to get a win, maybe a narrow win there. Then the first home game is going to be against Kielce. Maybe you can write that one off. I can't, not that sure. But look at Kielce last season, how they were shocked in some of their early games as well. So maybe there's a early surprise there. And then they would be playing against Zagreb away. So, we'll get a good feeling for where they're at as a club. And we'll see maybe what some of their secondary players are like. Because it's all good and well having a good starting 7, but the wheels can fall off pretty quickly if you don't have any kind of these good secondary players to maybe come in. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they perform in those opening 3 matches, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all of that is a good way to start with these kind of 2 winnable games, which is very doable for them. But let's see what they do. Despite the issues that they're having, to an extent that the general manager actually had to get a loan of 2 million Norwegian kroner from his parents to keep it afloat, which was a pretty kind of ridiculous piece of news from my perspective. But it does seem, they still have their big sponsor. They just have to be creative around what else goes on. And I think there is potential if they do kind of perform at a high level this season, there is potential that they do build the extra sponsors, get creative. We saw Kielce, how, their approach to sponsorship being, lots of smaller sponsors, even signing players to be able to bring sponsors on board. As long as they are kind of smart commercially, I think they can keep this thing going. But there is a risk, there's a risk that they just don't perform. If this team that they've invested in is only good enough for like a quarter-final place, not even a quarter-final place. We know how competitive the Champions League is. For a couple of seasons, they need new investments, and they might hit a wall. And obviously, there's this example of AG Copenhagen that always comes to mind with stories like this, where it was 2 ambitions. But in this case, it's not. The general manager has said that they don't have a kind of money bags rich person in the back who's just going to support a losing financially project. It is a kind of fully commercial venture that they're going to try to make work. And I think that's actually comforting, that this is a team that does have a solid commercial backing behind it. They're too ambitious, but they'll find their level, and interest will just increase with this club as they compete in the Champions League, and I think they will survive. So hopefully that goes well.
It's just a shame that they have the same colour jerseys as AG Copenhagen as well. I mean, that's just like a nightmare. Just the reverse and home kit are the exact same colours. All they need to do is cut off the sleeves, and they'll be just a new generation AG Copenhagen. But it is mad the similarities to it as well. When you think back to the AG Copenhagen team as well, it's kind of this kind of Scandi Nordic super team. So there is, I think that's probably where the comparisons really stop, apart from the kit colours as well. But I did like how the general manager, Sivertsen, was quite open and honest about the whole thing as well. You mentioned it as well, but he said he's been accused of being over-ambitious and naive. And with this result in hand now, we probably have been. You know, it's a pretty straightforward and honest quote, I think, from him. So I think it's probably the only way to do it, because if you're going to try and build a trust with, if they do survive this season and everything kind of works out and they kind of get by the skin of their teeth, if they want to kind of make signings or people to join the club next season, you do need to be seen maybe as being open and honest to make whatever or grow for next season as well. But looking at the handball community in the past, I think handball players are fine to take a punt with such things. If we look at various projects which have struggled, like Vardar in the past or Kielce to a certain extent, didn't really stop them from signing players at certain points either, did it? So handball players are maybe not as allergic to it as maybe in other sports. They're willing to take a risk for a season.
Yeah, and I think the Norwegian players that did sign up for the project do have the underlying ambition to increase the popularity of handball in Norway. That's kind of the goal of this project, to take advantage of the increase in popularity on the men's side and just keep pushing it forward. So I think for them, there's more to it than just it's not mercenaries essentially that you kind of get with these projects. Sometimes it's really players who are committed to the country and the sport in their homeland, which I think is an extra element that will make sure that this project succeeds, at least in the short to medium term.
And so Gudjohnsen is probably the only non-Norwegian in there, and he's just the nicest guy ever. So, I mean, he was always going to stick around. Nicest smile in handball. From one kind of big story to another one, which is kind of making the rounds on social media, and which one you made a lovely graphic for, is Andre Gomes, who a lot of people were touting that he was going to be playing for Fuchs Berlin next season. And I think a lot of people liked the sound of that, of him maybe teaming up with Matthias Gitzel. It was a very interesting combination there. It's probably one of the most direct handball players in Andre Gomes, and an absolute magician in the backcourt, Matthias Gitzel. But it didn't work out. He's on his way to Saudi Arabia. You maybe know a little bit more details about this story, Alex, but what do you make of the move?
It's pretty wild, to be honest. This move came out of nowhere, and it has parallels to what we're seeing in football, with Saudi Arabia having a large amount of money to spread around, which has now kind of hit handball. So he's going to a Saudi club called Al Safa, who have been kind of relatively good in Saudi Arabia, but last season they actually finished 9th in the league, so nothing, it's not even a top team, but they've obviously decided to invest some money in it, and the wage that comes from there is pretty ridiculous. We're talking a base salary of €600,000 increasing to €900,000 in bonuses, which is really, it's probably top 5 salaries in the world, especially if you consider the fact that Saudi Arabia doesn't have any income tax. So essentially he's just getting most of that money straight into his pocket. It's huge. And the very interesting thing was that from, this news came out through Bild, the German newspaper, and it was a lot of comments from his agent. And a comment really piqued my interest, where at the end of the article that announced it was like, football is not the only place where Saudi Arabia is interested. So it almost seems like the start of something, not a kind of random splash in the ocean where a club just decides to buy this player. And I would also say that, I wouldn't be surprised if this club had actually paid some severance to Melsungen to get rid of that contract, because that was the initial issue with Andre Gomes potentially moving to Fixer Berlin, is because he had a really high contract in Melsungen of 600,000 euro, or reported to be around 600,000 euro per year, and still had 2 years left on that contract. So basically Andrew Gomes is saying, well, I'm not cancelling this contract unless you pay me off. So the club may have also contributed to that severance a little bit as well. But just come on, Andre Gomes, come on.
Yeah, but I read somewhere online that they were asking for 25% of the contract to release him. So would that be around 250,000? I think, maybe, I'm not sure. But like you're saying there, come on. But like, in your heart of hearts, would you turn down an offer like that to play 1 year over there and almost earn $1 million untaxed money?
But like, so he was already on a big contract, and
yeah,
he is. How old is he? So 24. And he's just, we had so much hope for Andre Gomes, right? He's such an exciting player. He's in the peak of his career, and he's literally, he already failed in the Bundesliga. He had a really poor season with Melsungen last year. He had some injury issues at some stage, but realistically, he was just quite poor. That also transferred to his Portugal national team career, where he would also drop down a level in terms of his ability. And instead of, looking to improve, maybe staying with Melsungen and trying to prove himself, going to a top team, he just goes to Saudi Arabia, which is not a serious handball league. It's just not. And maybe that's his level. Maybe he's just figured out, you know what, I'm happy to go and do something where I'm relaxed. But I'm disappointed, because I really like Andre Gomes as a player, because he's just so dynamic. He's so exciting. And it's, he's probably giving up his spot in the Portuguese national team, like with Martin Costa at left back now, Calvo-Canchi. He's probably right down the pecking order. And my question is, like, how do you recover from that? How does he come back into top level handball after that? It's short-sighted, because he gets this payout for a year, but then what? Where's he going to go? He's like, who's going to buy into this player that just has been playing in the desert for a year?
I don't know. I think he's probably thinking, look, this is only a year. I was troubled with injuries. I didn't have the best season in the Bundesliga. Let me go out here, work on getting fit and staying injury free for a season in a very low taxing type of league. And maybe he was thinking to himself, look, I'm not really made for the Bundesliga. Maybe it's physically too taxing for him, and that's why he was getting injured in the first place, and why his form dipped. And maybe he's the kind of player that needs an easier league to perform at that really high intensity kind of style that he does have. Like, so maybe he's thinking along those lines. Let's just get out there, make an absolute bag, and get fit again, and then come back. And then look, there will be loads of teams that'll take loads of special teams in like the European League and stuff like that will take a punt on him again. He'll be 25 next year when he comes back. He still has he's still really, really young in handball terms as well. So I think I could understand maybe from his perspective why he's doing it. And I think a lot of people, if they're being honest with themselves, if they're offered that type of money to go out just to take a year, almost like a year sabbatical, to go out there and do that, I think they really wouldn't turn it down themselves. I know it's not ambitious or anything like that, but yeah, I can somehow understand it. I don't think it's great. I don't want it to go the way football's going. I don't think anyone wants that, but on a personal level, you can kind of understand it.
Do you think it's a risk, this kind of again, this ominous message from the agent of Andre Gomes that said, this is this is the start of Saudi Arabia? Do you think there will be a flow of players from Europe to Saudi Arabia?
I mean, we don't know. I mean, I think it's really hard to know what the idea with there, but it would seem like to me that there's a big emphasis on that now in Saudi Arabia. It'll probably have when someone does something in football, it's always going to have a trickle down effect to some of the other sports. I think we'll never see it to the same degree that we see in football, obviously, but I'd see you probably could see a handful of players moving over. But I don't think it's anything that anyone really wants to see, but just people's morals being tested and just being dragged out because the number is just so high that you just cannot say no. You could have wealth for your family for years just by playing 1 or 2 seasons over there. And we have seen it in some bits with Qatar before Qatar hosted the World Championship. So we have some experience with it already. But this could be now the second wave of it, and it could be a lot bigger with some of the rich Saudi heads getting a taste for high-level sport in their countries. So I don't think it's anything anyone wants to see, but I think we will see a little bit of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is part of this ambition of Saudi Arabia to, they want to host a World Cup. They probably want to host an Olympics at some stage as a long-term goal. And there is already a flow of players going into the Saudi League. And at the moment, it's actually, so even just Al Safa, that same club, they signed El Hamdawi, who is the Egyptian national team goalkeeper from Zamalek, going to Saudi Arabia. They also signed a couple of Bahraini national team players. We know how good Bahrain have been over the last while. Mohammed going to Al Safa as well. So there's a little bit of a flow or a change of direction in the Middle East from Qatar and Bahrain, where this has probably sat before Egypt, where there's a quality handball league already. So there's a bit of a flow going from those countries. We also saw Leandro Dutra, the Brazilian player, going from Vardar to Al Khalij, I think, which is another Saudi team. So the flow is starting in that direction. But I think Andre Gomes is the highest profile player, definitely. And it has sent warning signals into Europe. I think I would say this has opened up a bit of a gate, because I do know on the football side, I've read an article from New York Times from Tariq Panja, and what happened in football was basically all the agents just got ravenous. So every agent in Europe saw that there's money in Saudi Arabia and just started calling every single club, every single representative to get a contact. And like all this huge network, the dark network of agents that work in football, trading players, all just saw this gold rush and started making it happen. I wonder if the same thing will happen in handball, where, if there's a few players at the end of contracts, their agents might give a call to Saudi Arabia. I just looking at Al Safa handball club's Instagram, there's a couple of handball players that follow their Instagram page. These being Mirza Terzic, who is following Al Safa. So interesting to see if he's looking for a little payout at the end of his career. And the other player that follows him, and maybe this is just kind of a coincidence, but Miguel Martins follows Al Safa handball club on Instagram, which
my God,
we've talked a lot about Miguel Martins and his performance over the last while. Maybe he's looking for a sabbatical as well to hang out with his good friend Andre Gomes.
Yeah, God, that would be a really mad one. But I mean, Mirza Terzic going out there to get a bag, I think is probably one of the most predictable things you could probably say. I could see that happening in a heartbeat. Miguel Martins, not so sure, but we'll see about that.
Just one last piece of news that I want to cover before we go, and that is Luka Sindrich, the other. It's kind of been really interesting over the last week because we've been getting insight into the salaries of handball players and actually just how high they really are. Luka Sindrich, who has been kind of going through this contract dispute with Barcelona, Mundo Deportivo reported that they're very close to resolution. Essentially, Luka Sindrich getting a payout for 1 year of his 2 years of contracts that he has left, and the salary level reported by Mundo Deportivo was €750,000. So again, right at the top of the handball game for Luka Sindrich. But within that report, there was also news that he basically has a team lined up ready to take him, and that is really interesting. I wonder who exactly that is. We've kind of talked about where he could go. My money's on Szeged, right? They're looking to make it a big.
Yeah, you'd think so, Szeged, or it could be a massive curveball and he's going back to Zagreb. Do you reckon? That'd be wacky, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be pretty wild. Maybe, that's that would prove their spot in the Champions League or improve their position in the Champions League for sure.
I mean, I think the club obviously would love to bring someone like that, and it would be a bit of a marquee signing. And after all the huffing and puffing that was done about them getting a Champions League spot, maybe they want to make a bit of a statement. But I would think he would suit a team like Szeged very well. And I mean, there are question marks about him being physically able or physically up to, like, he doesn't seem to be physically in the same shape as he used to be. So maybe he would be looking for maybe something like Zagreb would suit him. But I think, yeah, Szeged is a good shout, all right. Anywhere else you could envision him playing?
I was thinking, like, even someone like Kiel. They made some younger signings, but it feels like Kiel have dropped a level going into the season behind Flensburg, and I wonder with the signings that Flensburg has made. And I was just thinking, maybe they want a short-term solution while, the skipper gets up to speed in Kiel. They don't want to rely so much on a 20-year-old Faroese player. But that could be another interesting one. Hey, could be just Melsungen. Melsungen can
yeah. Getting their checkbook out once again.
Yeah. But it would be wild. Yeah. Imagine if he went to Saudi Arabia as well. That would.
Oh my God. I mean, that would be huge. Then we'd have to do a whole new podcast about that topic, I think, because then it would be clear that the warning signs were real.
If Fuchs Berlin can somehow make it happen, they really need a player in the backcourt. So they lost Jakob Holm to PSG, and they were really hoping on signing Andre Gomes. Or they're trying to sign Andre Gomes to bolster that backcourt, and that obviously didn't happen. I think Fuchs Berlin are in a little bit of trouble this season. Their only playmaker right now is Niels Lichtlein, who was the under-21s World Championship MVP, but their backcourt, losing Jakob Holm and Paul Drux, who's still injured, is looking a bit thin. And I think they already made this kind of big investment in Giesel that they probably do need to do something to bolster that backcourt, or else, they're just going to suffer in the Bundesliga. Like, there's so many good teams that they're just going to end up in the European League again, and that's not their ambition. So a few teams to look out for with Luka Sindrich.
Yeah, Sindrich and Fuchs is a tasty thought, isn't it? All right, I think we'll leave it there then for today. Thanks, Alex. We'll be back again soon. I know that, as you said at the top of the hour, I think it's a little bit up and down when we're recording these things with everyone away and different things going on in the summer. But we'll try to be as regular as possible. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Good night and goodbye.
Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon, wherever you are. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.